Welcome to episode 51 of Comic Book Nation, the official podcast of Comicbook.com. I'm your host, Kofi Outlaw, and with me again is my co-host, Matthew Aguilar.
What up, peoples?
And joining us as we enter this new era of the show, I call it Comic Book Nation Phase 4, is Mr. Charlie Ridgely.
Hello.
And because we've been on the Comic-Con beat, we are a little run down still, but we're on the road to recovery. Mr. Brandon Davis is recovering on a beach somewhere in Hawaii right now because he was so overworked, so he needed some R&R, and we couldn't get him into the Tahiti facility, fast enough. So he's out recovering in Hawaii, but me and Matt are still here in the studio, soldiering on, along with producer Jim Viscardi over there in the cut.
Hello.
So, because we've been out on Comic-Con, there's been a lot of news. There's a lot of kind of news items that we are going to get through. So largely today, we're going to be kind of cleaning up that pile with some much-needed news flash rundown. But at the end of that, we are also going to be taking a deep dive into the new era of X-Men launched by Jonathan Hickman in House of X #1 for our deep dive. But along with that, in our news flash, we're going to be talking about the new trailers for Will Smith's Gemini Man and the just hot off the presses trailer for Zombieland Double Tap. We will also be talking about some sequels that are coming up from the Halloween franchise. We're going to also be talking about Avengers Endgame's box office supremacy, and is it legit, or is there another movie that technically could be still dethroning it, among some other things. So be sure to stick around for that, because when we come back, we are going to jump hard and fast into this news break, so don't go anywhere. All right, so up first, we got some hot flash news and some news flash regular to get through. So there are going to be some pieces we're going to spend a lot of time or a little bit more time talking about, and some pieces we're going to really just burn through. First up, we want to say goodbye to an acting, I know icon gets blown out of proportion here, but one of the character actor greats of our time, Mr. Rutger Hauer, who passed away. He actually passed away a bit ago, and they kind of had a funeral for him, I believe. And so, yeah, he is gone at age 75. And if you don't remember Rutger Hauer, he was kind of a breakout star thanks to Blade Runner, of course. But he also got his start in America. He was a famous Dutch actor. Kind of got his launch thanks to Paul Verhoeven, the director of Basic Instinct, who was working in the Netherlands TV. Then he kind of came over here and got his start in Sylvester Stallone's Nighthawks, in which he kind of played this terrorist villain attacking New York in a time where people thought that premise was too crazy for a movie. I know, right? Funny. Yeah. So then he kind of had his breakout in Blade Runner, but, modern audiences really knew him from things like playing Bruce Wayne's kind of Wayne Enterprises executive in Batman Begins, or playing Cardinal O'Rourke in Sin City, and of course the Grindhouse spin-out, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez spin-out, Hobo with a Shotgun. That was Rutger Hauer. So we're gonna miss him because he's attached to. Oh, how could I not mention Lady Hawk, bro? He was in Lady Hawk, Michelle Pfeiffer's Lady Hawk. So he's been a familiar face for a long time, and so we're gonna miss him. So we just want to take a minute and say R.I.P. to Rutger Hauer. Does anybody else have anything specific to add to that? No. If you do, you got 20 seconds.
I think you covered it.
We're going to keep it moving. All right. Now, moving right along, Avengers Endgame. So, Avengers Endgame has surpassed Avatar to become the top highest grossing movie of all time worldwide.
Yay!
But people are starting to throw in those asterisks. There's always going to be the Star Wars crowd pointing out that Force Awakens is still the domestic crown for highest grossing movie of all time in the U.S., But there's also this new report that came out about Gone with the Wind, the classic, Southern Confederate era movie about Scarlett O'Hara. And basically it says that Gone with the Wind, if adjusted for today's ticket prices and inflation, would actually be like a $3 billion movie in ticket sales, as opposed to Avengers Endgame, which is like 2.7 whatever, point, billion. So, according to that, Gone with the Wind would still be box office king, and in some circles is being considered about box office king. I thought this was just interesting because it kind of brought up this whole idea about how this race of box office highest grossing movie of all time worldwide is never good. It's just like built on sand now. Like every little thing changes it.
Yeah.
Avatar has been surpassed by Avengers Endgame, but when Avatar 2 comes around and Avatar does this inevitable big re-release, is it going to earn the necessary money to kind of get over Endgame again? And then is Marvel going to take the next opportunity to re-release Endgame to get back over Avatar? And it's just gotten kind of crazy. So the whole thing's kind of getting silly at this point. But
I know. Did anyone bring that up when Avatar had it, the crown?
Inflation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, inflation's the thing, but not like no one cared about it as much. Like
No one still cares about
social media
inflation.
wasn't what it was. Like people only care because it's a discourse now, and like
It's
there's things
just
to argue about. There's a fandom.
it's just kind of irrelevant because I mean this is the same thing that sports debates begin about. Like, well, what if Michael Jordan played in the current NBA and like he'd be able to score and there's no defense and like all these are like what if scenarios. Whatever the number is, whatever the number is, deal with it. If you don't like it, sorry. Like, stop. Like, this is just like people looking to debate something that's just not real.
yeah, and I said like, whereas there's more of a case of something like Avatar to come around and get a legitimate re-release and have a legitimate run. Gone with the Wind has had like crazy amount of re-releases.
Yeah.
And when
Like,
it came out, there
over
were
the
like
course of,
4
like-
movies in a theater a year. Like,
Yeah, but it's had like
there weren't any movies to go
30
see.
I forget the exact number of re-releases it's had, but it's had
It's had a ton.
yeah, it was like 35 years or something of re-releases. Yeah, 35 years from 1939 to 1974. There were multiple re-releases, national re-releases that kept contributing to its total. But in the era we're living in, I don't think it's the kind of movie that's going to get rolled out for too much longer to be like, let's take a fond memory down Confederate Lane.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, it's still, it's like,
people aren't going to be flocking back to go see Gone with the Wind. I mean, down here in Nashville, maybe. Like,
I was gonna say it's a cinema. I mean, it is regarded
national,
as that.
but no,
classic,
to keep contributing towards this total has to be a national release.
Yeah.
And I don't see it. Yeah, so that time is kind of passed for that movie. I think I think we can stop counting on that one.
And if
Dragging
Avatar
that one out.
does do another reissue right before the other one, like good on them, smart.
But
Like,
it's not
take
it's
back
not
the
a
record.
them anymore, though.
Yeah, I know.
Both
well,
things are owned by the same company.
exactly.
now.
But if Disney, I don't. Why would they? Do you think they will?
They bought Avatar's success. They earned
It
Endgame's
is
success.
almost
They want that to be the
absolutely
number one.
certain that by the time Avatar 2 gets around, Disney's gonna be like, "Yo, remember Avatar all those years ago? Like, come relive the magic." And James Cameron will do like super 4K 3D or something
that.
stupid.
I think
like that.
they'll do like they do with Marvel movies. They'll release a double feature or like a thing where you go see them both together. Or like right before.
It'll
It's
have
not national. I
Avatar
don't
will
think it's gonna have a
definitely
big
get
national-
It'll get like a
limited-
remastered version.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
limited re-release, guaranteed. So yeah, but for now, I mean, I'm with Matt. All the haters and trolls can fall back. Marvel has the crown. It got it. Did Kevin Feige and them drop a couple, like, $4 million in ticket
Who
buying,
knows?
right, to have this happen during Comic-Con? Who knows? But that's a conspiracy theory for another day. We've got a lot of news to get to, so we're going to keep it moving. All right, next up, the Zombieland 2 trailer has dropped. Zombieland Double Tap.
It's so good.
Yeah, and it's kind of split. We all loved it, but of course there has to be one troll in the punch bowl, and that troll today is Mr. Matthew Aguilar.
You said split as in, and I was like, oh, who's with me? And I
What?
was like,
No
oh
one.
no,
I
I'm on that
forgot
ledge by
Jim was
myself.
over there.
split.
Nope.
I forgot Jim was over there. I was counting just me and Charlie
Okay.
versus you, and I was
Yeah.
just gonna call
that's
that a
fine.
split. To be nice,
I'm
but,
used
like,
to it.
Yeah, so the trailer came out, and it wasted no time of just plunging us right back into the world of Zombieland and the kind of mix of horror and irreverent humor that kind of made the first film really great. We got this opening sequence of, like, reminding us that these are 4 that Woody Harrelson, Abigail Breslin, Emma Stone, and Jesse Eisenberg are all at least Academy Award nominated, if not winning actors. Before just getting into some hilarious sequence of them just wiping out zombies and kind of going through Zombieland. And the wrinkle in this one is that Jesse Eisenberg's character, Columbus, meets a new girl who's this kind of ditzy girl. And of course, that begins to ruffle feathers with Emma Stone, and their whole like little quasi family kind of gets broken up and needs to be reunited. Abigail Breslin's character runs off with a guy. and so Columbus is having, or Tallahassee's having daddy issues, and it was kind of a family drama mixed with like a horror comedy, and I thought it was hilarious. I love Zombieland, and this just looked like a trailer that made a sequel. That's been it's been a while since Zombieland was out, and this looked like it's going to live up to it and still be just as good, and I liked it. But Matt apparently saw a different trailer.
No,
that
I
he'd like to
mean,
talk about.
look, I love the first one. It's one of those movies that like Anissa hadn't seen. I was like, oh my god, you have to see this because like it's just great, right? And I love the blending of like over the top humor and the fun family dynamic. Like all that stuff's great. The Twinkies thing, like you see that referenced in here, right? You see a lot of those little callbacks. To me, though, it just seemed like a lot of by the numbers, like a lot of the stuff fell flat for me. The new characters do nothing for me. Like the two, granted, I
mean,
get
you
their
saw them
glimpses.
for like
I'm judging a trailer.
second.
It's not like everyone saw the show, and I'm not
still
judging the
won't
show. I'm
stop
judging a
laughing.
trailer, so I judge what's in the trailer.
I still won't stop laughing every time he stops the brake, puts his foot on the brake real short, and the girl just comes flying over and hits her face into the dashboard. That makes me
Well,
laugh
and I love
every
it.
time.
So Zoe Dutch has been in a bunch of movies the last couple of years. Set It Up is probably one of the most people have seen, and she's so funny and so good. And like, I can't wait to see her in this.
And I hope it's better than
Rosario
this
Dawson.
5-second thing. Rosario Dawson,
That's
I will
awesome.
support in everything. But I also didn't like the same thing you're complaining about. You didn't see anything. She's barely in the trailer.
It was a tease.
So why are you excited for it? And I
Because
can't
I
be
like
down
those
on the other.
Female
because I like those
Tallahassee,
people.
what
I'm
more
saying
do I
like
need to
it
know?
just seems like all those jokes fell flat. The Wii jokes stupid. The humor with like the in the White House, and I was expecting something kind of fun, and it's just boring. Like this trailer is boring until the very end. And when you see like the whole Tallahassee and like the mirror group where it's like, oh, they're just like us, and like Emma Stone's kind of like, well, does anyone see it? That part's interesting because I think there's potential there. But like I said, I'm not saying that the movie's gonna be crap. I'm just saying this trailer sucked. I very wrote it's forgettable, and I was bummed because I was really looking forward to it. So
I did not like the weird mixing of music that it went from like one song to another, and it just didn't feel like it fit for like a cohesive.
Yeah, which is the
story,
cutting of the trailer
which is
itself
fine.
it could be a little weird.
But other than that, I mean, I'm still all in for it.
so
yeah, I
my-
thought this was a great trailer.
I
I rarely disagree with you this hard, but like, yeah, I thought this was a great trailer. I love the visual joke about the White House thing about Tallahassee not being too far away from like the actual government we have now, and like that.
Yeah,
whole
I would have
thing.
been a great president.
That was a great joke. I thought that was funny because you could have gotten a lot more on the nose and heavy-handed, but they did it in like a really funny way. So I like the kind of humor in this, and
Still written by the guys who did the
Yeah.
first one.
yeah, same director, same
Brett
writers.
and Paul.
yeah.
Brett and Paul.
So I mean, I thought I kind of just disagree. I thought this was great, and I like the kind of evolution of the characters, how they're kind of like this kind of cool unit, and I like the kind of introduction of these characters that are kind of pull them in different directions. I thought the hippie guy was like great, and I thought the weed joke was funny when he's just like, "No, I don't look like a guy who has weed," and he just pulls out this huge bag. Yes, you saw it coming, but it was still kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I think Rosario Dawson as a female Tallahassee is going to be, something I would pay to see and have paid to see.
I support
for.
Rosario Dawson in every
So,
single
like,
project
yeah.
she's in.
All right, well, we're gonna have to see more. We'll see more, but I can't wait for you to turn around and be like the biggest fan of Zombieland.
And I hope it's good. Like I'm not trying to sit up here and say like I'm just going against the
and we were
tide.
gonna
I just
troll
didn't
shame
like the
you
trailer.
when you are.
I just
We will
like the
troll
trailer.
shame you for your heel turn.
If I got crap for turning around on Aladdin,
Yeah, you're definitely getting shamed.
why?
you're gonna because I said
I said the trailer sucked. I didn't say the movie was gonna suck. You said the movie looked like it was gonna be terrible. I
because
didn't
the
say
trailer was
that.
bad.
I said the trailer was bad. I used my
that is
words
a good point.
correctly.
That is a good point. Still not gonna save you from troll.
That's
shame.
perfectly fine. I'm
All
just
right.
saying, get your facts right.
Moving right along, Gemini Man. So Will Smith's in this Ang Lee sci-fi action movie, Gemini Man, and we got the second trailer for that. The first trailer kind of just teased the concept of the film, which is basically that Will Smith's like this elite hitman that Clive Owen takes genetic material from and then grows this kind of younger clone of him who he then sends to kill the original hitman. Elite hitman. So now you got an elite hitman and his trying to kind of outwit his younger self. So that was all premise, but it's like, how does this movie going to play in a longer stretch? But what we saw in the second trailer is, made me think like Ang Lee really can do anything. It's kind of crazy. Like this guy is like one of the most versatile people I've ever seen in Hollywood. Like one moment he's doing like Joy Luck Club, and then he's like taking on Life of Pi and like making a crazy effects driven movie like that with a talking tiger that it like steals the show. Or was it talking tiger or just a tiger in a boat? It was just a tiger in a boat. I'm getting my Jungle Books, Lion Kings, and all this stuff mixed up. Anyway, so now where he's doing like a sci-fi action movie, and it looks really crazy dope. The filming style I was kind of worried about when I first saw it, like the kind of digital, like I forget how to kind of describe it, but like I don't even know. The kind of digital look where it's almost like instead of looking like film, like it's shot on film, it just looks like that smooth effect, almost like your TV, like the real cinema effect.
Soap opera look.
Yeah, and like the kind of trying to make it look like real life, the Michael Mann style, basically. But this looked good. This trailer was a lot tighter with the effects. The visual effects for Will Smith and his younger self look really good. And I think Will Smith will actually have one of his better performances that we've seen from him in a long time, playing the two sides of himself. And I think he will actually be able to do a good job of kind of selling us on like young Will Smith and that whole kind of nostalgia, plus playing his kind of older, crankier, wisecracking, Clint Eastwood self. And so I'm kind of really interested in Gemini Man. What'd you guys think of the trailer?
What do you think, Joe?
I liked it a lot for the most part. I liked it a lot better than the first one because the first one I just kind of felt like here's another Looper, and I like Looper a lot, so I don't need a mimic of that. But kind of getting into the story and what this is, and there's a lot of twists and turns to be had in this. It looks really good. Will Smith looks phenomenal. There's a couple scenes with his younger version where he's just like weeping while talking to Clive Owen. In both trailers, there's a couple shots of that, and it's like it's like prime Will Smith. It looks really good. But I had some pause for concern at the end. Did you notice when the credits came up? See a familiar name pop up there?
No, who's
the
that?
co-writer of the story and the script, one David Benioff. The co-creator and showrunner and writer of Game of Thrones, who we have all soured on pretty quickly. It might be totally fine, and I'm just.
I mean, he also
overthinking
wrote
that.
the book, The 25th Hour, which became a pretty great movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's it gave me some pause of like, oh, okay, well, let's see his first post Game of Thrones.
The only thing that gave me pause in the trailer was at the very end. They did this thing where like, there's one more secret we have to show you, where he's like, it's because you don't understand what we are. And I was like, oh boy.
Oh yeah, that whole like if they find out about what we are or whatever line. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
the,
like,
the
oh,
older Will
boy.
Smith's not real either.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
gonna be
not.
the
That's
neither
what
one
it
of them
is.
are real.
And that's what I was like. So you're like numbers, 64 and 69 in a line of clones. You're gonna find out, and like something like that. So I don't know. Or you're just your genetic material is like, and then you're gonna find a really old, dying Will Smith. Like is the genetic donor or something. So like, I mean, that kind of cheesy stuff I saw coming, but this has, I mean, like, let's be honest, this looks like a sci-fi action B movie, like
I'm
concept, and I'm just kind of excited to enjoy it like that.
I liked the trailer. I didn't love the trailer. I liked it. It's weird. It's almost like you can appreciate someone's performance, but not give one iota to go see that movie. Like, I'm not gonna go to the theater and see this. Like, I know me. Like, that's just like this is not enough to get me into the theater. However, I do like his performance. A couple of spots you guys mentioned with like he's talking to his younger self, and there's some back and forth between him and Clive Owens. Those are really good. Like, those are really interesting. I don't want to see a whole movie of that. Like, it's just not enough. So this trailer really didn't do it for me either. And the bike stuff looks rough. I don't like the bike stuff.
He got punched in the face with a motorcycle. What is wrong?
It just looks
with that.
It just looks.
He got
It didn't.
punched
It
in the
looked
face
weak.
with a
I
motorcycle.
don't know. I didn't love it.
Dude, the motorcycle stuff's awesome.
I didn't love it.
There's
Like, I'm gonna see this
four
movie like I
motorcycle
see.
scenes in there,
It's like a better version of Hobbs and Shaw, where it's like it's not strictly pure like ridiculous entertainment. It's like a step above that, but still embraces the ridiculous entertainment aspect of it.
Just didn't do it for me.
And I mean, I'm not gonna not see a Will Smith movie. There's no
Oh my
way.
God, you're so hard to please today.
I mean, look, man, sorry. I'm typically like the super positive one on the
We'll
show,
call
but I don't
you.
know what it is.
You
We'll call
like the
you when
Sonic
Captain
trailer, and
America
you're sitting here
2
yelling
when
about
Captain
Gemini
Marvel
Man?
2 comes around, we'll call you.
I mean, whatever. Just don't like it.
Moving right along, we got a couple hot flash news items to get through real quick. First one, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie has been delayed again. Does anybody care?
Matt does. Matt loved the trailer for Sonic.
I did. I
Wow.
thought it was fun.
I mean,
like the
it's not really a surprise considering when they said they were going to go in and redesign Sonic.
Oh yeah, no,
See how I
it's not at all.
stand
They
behind
were
that
going to
wholeheartedly?
need more
Yeah.
I like what I like, man. Sorry, I'm not a robot. Like, I like that trailer. It was fun. But yeah, I think it was not smart for them to go and redesign it, just release it. I've said that before. But if they're gonna keep delaying it, you're just sinking money into a ship that's gonna not make its
I
money
mean,
back.
they had what 6 months to
They should've-
redesign the entire main character of the movie.
They should have just released it. So, but yeah, there you go.
Apparently it's coming out just a month later, but like it just brought up the question because I like forgot Sonic was a thing that was alive and happening. And
Yeah.
does anybody care? Is this movie dead already?
No, I mean, it might not
No,
make,
I mean,
it
all
might
it takes is
not make any money.
If
but
they redesign it and the redesign looks good, all it takes is another trailer and it's back in everyone's minds again.
Well, yeah,
It's
I mean,
fine.
we were talking about Dark Phoenix, like it was never going to hit theaters, because Disney bought the stuff and it was a disaster.
That's
and-
your example.
I mean,
Are you trying to like?
I'm not saying.
Dark Phoenix was always going to hit theaters. Anyone who
Yeah,
thought that
that's
movie
what
was
I'm saying.
never
Like
going
when
to
you
hit
say
theaters
dead,
is a straight
I
up
mean,
idiot.
it's going to hit theaters. It's going to be released. Is my
New
argument.
Mutants.
I
never
told
gonna
them
see
they
theaters.
should not hit theaters with it, and I was a straight up, profit on that one. Like, yeah, profit being a double funny word.
I mean, they'd already lost the money.
Yeah.
They've already spent the money. So get back what you can.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's a dead brand. It's all right. Get back what you can.
All right, so Sonic is a thing, and you can go see it eventually. All right, moving right along. Halloween. So, while during Comic-Con and the flurry of Comic-Con, we talked about this a little bit in our recaps, but, we were talking a lot, and we were kind of focused on Halloween when this podcast started, or was that last year? Or no, this was before the podcast started, huh?
I think so.
So the podcast in my head, we were focused on Halloween and talked about it a lot. But Halloween was a good comeback franchise, thanks to David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. And during Comic-Con, it was John Carpenter, I believe, who kind of just dropped the formal announcement that we're getting 2 sequels, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. And apparently these are going to come at us pretty fast because Danny McBride and David Gordon Green have already let it be known that, they've had these ideas kind of cooking and they actually have prepared them for at least a sequel script and it's going to be coming down the pike. And so, yeah, we're getting more Michael Myers.
Well, those movies weren't incredibly expensive to make.
Nope. And they made good money and
Especially the last one, right?
Yeah, and rekindled the
was a huge movie.
franchise. And I think there's just good questions because I wrote it to the show notes. I was like, I hope Halloween Kills. I was talking with a friend and I was saying, the last one's we were looking at the titles, Halloween Kills and then Halloween Ends. And we were saying, like, if Halloween Ends is titled that, I really hope it is just a complete trilogy story. But then I looked on our site and they're already saying, Halloween Ends won't be the end. There will be more Halloween to come. And I was like, damn it. And I was like, yeah. So my whole spiel was going to be, I hope they just make a really good, complete trilogy and then just cut it off. But apparently we'll be back to Season of the Witch before we know
They
it.
can't help themselves, huh?
No, they can't. But I enjoyed it. I am really curious how they pick up after Halloween, the last chapter we got, because if you saw the ending of that, I mean, they trapped Michael Myers in a basement that was designed to be this intricate cage that Laurie Strode's been planning for 20-odd years or something, or 30 years, and then burned him alive. So I'm interested to see what happens there, because that slow-moving, hulking man somehow can evade things like a jaguar. I don't know. But I also want to see what happens with Laurie Strode's granddaughter, who was seen kind of embracing her violent side and stabbing Michael Myers with a knife, and still the last shot of the film is her still holding that bloody knife. So is this going to be like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and she starts to go nuts, or like what's it going to be? So I'm interested in that. You guys excited for that? Matt, I know you kind of, your horror love is,
But I'm actually like excited for that. I'm kind of interested to see. Typically, I like them to I'd rather them just tell me as the sequels come, like, oh, hey, this one, like, because there's a little bit of surprise in that, you know, leaving. But now it's like, oh, I know that story's not going to wrap up here. It's
Well, I
gonna
mean,
be in the
they're
third one.
shooting them back to back. It's one of those
Yeah.
like it's kind of part one and part two to the same.
But I'm interested to see
Same
like
movie.
that, like if they
Right.
keep going with Myers, or if do they kind of take a little bit of a side view,
Yeah, I
or do
mean,
something different.
there's
It's cool.
gender flipping all over the place. Why not in
Yeah.
horror?
I mean, I think it like I love Halloween. The original Halloween is one of my favorite movies of all time, and so I enjoyed the reboot. And I think if this kind of follows the same vein, it's never going to reach the heights of the original one, but it's still going to be fun no matter what. You know, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be scary. You know, it's a good venture to go into where like it's not going to ruin Halloween like some of the other sequels have.
Well,
I think it's
my only holdup
really
is
a nice self-contained.
it's
film.
like Force Awakens to Last Jedi, right? Like Halloween was good, but it was good in large part because they did such a good job of keeping it modern, but also banking on
Oh yeah,
kind of surfing the wave of the original and the whole point of it was taking things back to that style of Michael Myers and of the original Halloween movie. Now you kind of are getting into territory where you actually got to make your own thing. You can't just do another rehash of the same stylistic and do another kind of nostalgia piece. You've got to continue your own story in your own world, and that's where it can get a lot more divisive with like what people choose to do. So, I mean, I'm a little bit just concerned with that. That's my only hang up. Like, if they step out into their own thing, do David Gordon Green and Danny McBride have, you know, their own kind of metal and ability as general horror filmmakers, not just John Carpenter super fans? You know what I mean?
right.
So we're gonna. Have
I
to
guess
see
the only
what-
reason I don't worry about it is because they have that what makes the original so great. Even if they're going to do their own story, which they need to, you're absolutely right. Other people that took on Halloween movies over the years didn't have that. Here is what makes this so iconic. Here's what John Carpenter did that make this work so well. They have an appreciation and understanding of what he did and what this is supposed to be. And so as long as they kind of keep that intact, they can branch out and tell a different story, but they can kind of keep that soul of what the franchise is supposed to be. And that's kind of where I think this is going to fail or succeed.
Well, all I know is if they have Michael Myers get into a whole big fight with somebody who turns out to be a hologram or something, like this is gonna be a big split for Halloween
He
fans.
takes on the Tupac hologram.
Get out of here. All right,
I'd
moving
watch
right
that.
along. Last but not least, on our news flash, we had a kind of a funny story about a man who tried to buy weed online in Canada using a Thor ID, which was like one of my favorite things to type as a headline this morning when I came in. Yeah, you got to check out this story. This guy. I mean, it's just so perfect because I think I just wanted to feature this because the actual ID is so funny. It's a picture of like Chris Hemsworth's Thor from Thor 1 while he's just hanging out in Human Town and he's giving like a little smirk and a wink smile with his long hair flowing and whatnot. But his name is Odin's son, comma, Thor Thunder, who lives at 69 Big Hammer Lane.
Oh my god.
Well, you gotta respect, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The best part about this scheme, this person was trying to use this ID and a scan of this ID to purchase legal weed off online dispensary in Canada. The only problem with this scheme that I found hilarious was they were trying to do this now, and they're using a license that expired, a fake license that still has an expiration date of May 22nd, 2017. So like 2 years.
You went through all that.
Yeah, for an over 2-year-old license. Like, I don't even understand some crooks. Like, you're gonna make a fake ID, but you're not gonna make it an active license.
Oh
like,
my
what's the point of
gosh,
that?
Man, jeez.
But as I say in the article, I mean, I don't know whether to laugh at the stupidity of this particular crook or attempted kind of forger, or be in awe at the level of worldwide Marvel fandom there really is out there. I also want somebody to go into the driver's license number and see if it's some kind of weird Marvel Easter egg, because there's like a set of numbers at the top, and after the revelations of 69 Big Hammer Lane, like I just want to know if there's any more funny like little things hidden in this. So be sure to take a look on the site at that because you got to see this ID. I mean,
It's a great
pretty,
idea.
Yeah, it's a pretty priceless, like little fake ID picture. So yeah, as we wait for Thor: Love and Thunder, these kinds of stories are gonna get me through. Okay, so stay tuned because after we get back, we are going to jump and take a deep dive into the new era of X-Men comics that began this week with Jonathan Hickman's House of X #1. So be sure to be here for that discussion. All right, so the day has come. You know, Marvel told us that Jonathan Hickman, who has gained fame from other Marvel stories like Avengers and big story arcs like Secret Wars and Infinity, was going to be bringing his unique style of storytelling to the X-Men. This has been a big event that's been teased. We've all been wondering what the hell. There's been like this whole game-changing secret and new status quo that, you know, a lot of big talk was thrown into this. And we went into Comic-Con just wanting to know what the hell this is all about. And we're just starting to get the picture with House of X #1, which hit shelves this week. And we've all read it, and we've been kind of talking about it in the office. We even got into a little sidetracked on it on our Comic-Con breakdown. So I wanted to just take a minute and kind of focus and like really just dissect what goes on in this issue, the pros, the cons, and then talk a little bit about what we think is coming next week in Powers of 10, #1, and overall from this arc and where it's going to probably leave the X-Men. So just to kick things off, I read it. Matt gave it to me, and I like went home and read it, and I was kind of half asleep, so I reread through it today because there is a lot to process in this. And the thing about this issue, and I think it's weirdly has the same pro as it does con, which is that this is very much just like an informational issue. Like it could just be like a prologue actually to an actual comic book story because it's literally just a rundown of like scenes and situations and informational charts saying here's your, in some cases, literal map to this new world I'm drawing.
Yeah.
And here's kind of just little scenes of how it functions now that you need to know because you need to kind of get oriented.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I mean, it is just an informational guide
Yeah.
to a new era of X-Men. And the way that is totally Hickman, and like you could see like a 70s sci-fi writer or something, like it's a novel. But I think we'll ultimately split fans. I mean, because the information I found very interesting and in some cases head scratching, like where the hell are you going to go with this?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not like an exciting read. Like you need to set aside, you actually have to this is like a reading assignment. Like you actually have to set aside some time and really kind of go through this and absorb it. You can't just blow through it like on your lunch break like a normal comic book.
But that's what I liked about it.
Yeah. And I kind of
There's
agree
a lot
with
to
that.
digest. Like I agree with
Yeah.
what you're saying 100%. I just felt differently about it. Like it was something I could sink my teeth into. And like there's so many comics that are just fluffy, and here's really fun pictures, and nothing's actually happening, and then some action and some fight scenes, and then more nothing. And this was a true reading experience. You know, like you had to be invested in it to read it, and that's, I think, you know, having to work for it just a little bit like really lets it, you know, have a payoff.
I agree with that because, like, I mean, it is incredibly dense. There's a ton of stuff. Also, the way this book is laid out and the way Hickman has kind of laid out both of these series, Powers of X, which will come out next week, is like each issue of that is supposed to focus more on the history of this stuff and make the House of X issues read differently. So essentially, like, it's supposed to fill in some gaps, but also reveal some unknown things about each previous issue of House of X. So that way it'll make you go back and read this in a different way. So there's a lot of little things I feel like once Powers of X ramps up, you'll start to see, oh, that's okay, that fits here. And it's going to be more like a puzzle in that respect. If that is handled correctly, that's a great thing. It can also be a convoluted mess very quickly, but I mean, Hickman seems to have a knack for that kind of thing. So I know, I mean, I really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it for the same reasons. Like I had to read it twice to really absorb all the little
All the
stuff.
different graphs and charts.
Yeah, like and all the little, all the stuff about Krakoa
Yeah, just
and
the
the flowers
ideas.
and the like all
What
that
is
stuff.
Jonathan Hickman's? Can we just stop? What is Jonathan Hickman's weird obsession with like growths,
Yeah, gardens and
gardens and growths and stuff like that?
yeah, that was huge during his Avengers
Yeah,
run too.
like that whole thing when I got to that in Avengers, I was like, wait, what? Like,
What is with the garden? Yeah, I know
Yeah.
that threw me a lot. We're in space and yet we're dealing with like these gardeners.
Gardening,
What is
yeah.
this? But yeah, there was a lot there, but I really enjoyed it. Also, Pepe Larraz did a fantastic job. I
Best
thought.
Stewart
Yeah,
Immonen
it's
impression.
really good art.
I honestly thought it was Stewart when I opened the book, and then I had to look at the cover. Oh, okay, this is good. What'd you think?
Yeah, I'm not as high on it as I think everyone else is. Like everyone's talking about that Fantastic Four scene. and things
Yeah.
like that.
It's really.
I mean, as with Jonathan Hickman books, the conspiracy theory hats, all of come out and everyone's wearing them. I want to believe. I mean, there's a lot that's told in those first 2 pages,
Mhm.
right? Where you have Xavier saying, or who we believe to be Xavier saying, "To me, my X-Men," and just a bunch of people just plopping out of plant pods.
Yeah,
I think the fact that Marvel Girl is wearing an old costume. I think the fact that Wolverine is still wearing an old costume. I don't think those are actually them. I think those may actually be Krakoan-made mutants dressed up to be them. I want to believe, like, my long-term whole thing here, that like Xavier is actually Sinister, because it feels just like a Hickman thing to do, but also a Sinister thing to do.
Mhm.
But and so because of that, and just like Cyclops also it talks in a way that Nick Fury did in Far From Home, where it feels a bit out of character, and I feel like it's on purpose.
See, I don't
just feel
feel
like
like
there's
that's
another
out of
person writing- there's
character.
another
But that
person
that
writing
Cyclops is not the Cyclops that we just saw, and I get it, right?
No,
Like, there
because
is
that
a-
Cyclops was not correct either.
But what Cyclops?
Cyclops
but then-
hasn't been correct since Bendis had him.
But what's? I don't even think even before Bendis. But like, what Cyclops is that?
I mean, it's Hickman Cyclops.
It
All starts over now, right? Like this is the beginning.
But
of
that
continuity.
Cyclops is the same Cyclops before the revolution started. That Cyclops, I'm forgetting the writer. It's the Terry Dodson run. He did a run on covers and interiors.
Brubaker?
It might be Brubaker. There was a certain run of Cyclops where he had like the blue and the gold
Right.
kind of modern design. He sounds like that Cyclops, and that's my favorite version of Cyclops.
If anything, I would imagine this Cyclops sounds like the Cyclops during Utopia, right?
Very much so, yeah.
But he doesn't still. Like this one, I can't.
The
imagine-
jetpack scene from Dark Avengers, that sounds exactly like this.
See, I don't think so.
He pops up and he's like, "Here, I'm here," and a little bit of a twist though, right? Because he's like, "Did you really think we were gonna take it?" Like, there's just a little bit of underneath, but it's still kind of snarky, but it's in a very leadership way.
This is the Cyclops that I've gotten arguments with in the whole office, especially with you and Jamie, because I have never really liked Cyclops very much.
Yeah.
And the guy that I've read, I've never been able to get into. I've thought he's really annoying and really just overall obnoxious. And the guy that you and Jamie have always described to me as this is what Cyclops is and this is why he's great. That's what I saw in this book.
Yeah.
Were the things that you guys have always said to me about why this is a really cool character. And he had that like this really big, bold confidence, but also like this really underlying like, hey, I want to be on the same page as you, and I hope we are, but I'm going to do right by my people no matter what. It was a very, very well written piece from him. I
As opposed to Magneto telling them,
I'm God now.
We're your gods now.
That was the best part of the whole book.
But like they're supposed to, because him and Cyclops have a lot in common as far as like how they approach from a strategy and like team leading perspective. But that's the biggest difference between them is how they interact with like humanity.
Yeah,
And
there-
you
there-
see
there's
it in
there's
this
a very,
issue.
very clear humility to Cyclops.
Yes.
In this issue, and then Magneto is like,
But
this
it's such
is
a
some of
good
my favorite
moment.
Magneto.
Yeah, it's such a good moment when he does it.
Cyclops is influenced by Xavier's kind of teachings, and you see him where it comes to where he could be. I didn't take it as arrogant. I took it as almost like a minority knowing when to just let the fight go. And if you're like a minority, you understand this. Like when you're trying to be in a situation and arguing with like authority or something, and you realize they're just not going to listen to you, and you kind of just take on this other persona that he takes on, which is okay,
It's
like
crazy. I read that way too.
yeah, and
So-
he's like, okay.
it's
And
so
he's
weird.
basically saying like, okay, white people, like you got it all figured out. Like, we're just gonna handle this later. And then he basically says something in a very kind of like activist. He's like very much an activist in this, and he's like, all right, we're gonna let you handle this. And he's like, I know eventually, like, we're gonna get this guy back because like we're not just gonna let this stuff go on anymore. And it's just a friendly threat, which I like from Cyclops.
Yeah.
And it's better than, like you say, than like Magneto being the other side of the coin. And it's just like, shut up, we're gods now. Like,
Even though that's excellent
doing
and
what we
perfectly
want.
fitting with his character,
Yeah.
when he's like,
And that's-
promises aren't threats.
and
That's a great
what's
line.
great. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of Hickman stuff written over these characters, but he does get the core of them, I feel like, and you see them coming out. Like, Magneto starts off this issue as like, hi, I'm an ambassador. And at the end, he's like, I'm your god. Pete,
So
sit down.
good.
Like,
So good.
and that's kind of good. And like, yeah, there's hints of a lot of the classic stuff still being in there, like was promised in a lot of ways, like the classic stuff being in there. Like, I got the feel of 70s. Like, I grew up because my brother's 10 years older than me and was an avid comics collector. So he was born in 1971. So when he grew up, he has like an entire era of 70s X-Men comics that I grew up kind of just reading through. All the Marauders thing, Archangel, all that stuff. And this very much had a feel of like a lot of that. Like the scenes with Mystique and Sabretooth feel like classic Freedom Force or something like that. And you got to wonder like what the selection of Kraoka and like why is that being brought up and like where is he going with this, because that island has very big ties to the history of the X-Men and very pivotal places, like where the original team evolved into the giant-sized team, and then later an entire team was destroyed that we found out, and then Xavier like mind wiped. So like, what is this whole thing kind of benevolent as it seems in the outset? Because Kraoka's like never really benevolent. It always turns out to be something kind of crazy. So like, what's going on with this? And like, yeah, I like Jim suspect that the Xavier we meet in the beginning is not at all Xavier.
I would love the
whatsoever.
Sinister thing. If
Yeah.
that's what happens, it'd be great. I just want it to happen and not undercut all this really interesting stuff they're building, because I feel like sometimes if that's he's really sinister, we could have a tendency to like go backwards and
Right.
go over all this stuff. It's just a ruse, and here they're all being held somewhere. And we've seen that a million times. I hope they are able to do that, because I think it's an interesting idea.
There's
and
still
not
there's
throw
still a
out the rest.
very big thing that that hasn't been addressed yet, that I imagine will get addressed in Powers of 10, is the Moira McTaggart of it all,
Yeah.
where she's supposed to have a huge role in this. We just don't know right now, and
Was she wasn't in the first issue at all.
she was not
right?
in the first issue at all.
Well, that's the human aspect of it is where I really got interested. And I wonder how she's going to tie into what was the name of the other organization that was very much like how Hickman did the Builders in Avengers and New Avengers, and there was a side story that just did not make sense or pay off for a while.
Oh, the one that's building that master mold.
That has the master mold up by the sun or by one of the planets,
I forget.
and they're.
I
and
remember
they're
the name of
tasked
the
with-
protocol, right? Because it's Orcus, right?
Orchids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they're tasked with policing mutants, and as soon as
Yeah.
mutants get out of hand, to like take over. And
It's those
there's
three
so
tiers.
much you don't know
Yeah.
about that. There's so much redacted information, and then that really mysterious chart, and like
And that's
that is
Master
gonna
Mold,
come
right?
into play
Is that Master Mold's head?
eventually.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I imagine it's a version of Master.
I saw Mother Mold referenced in there at some point, so I guess maybe they have that. But yeah, I mean, I found that part really interesting. I just also love that like half this organization, like a chunk of it is made up of AIM. It's like AIM, Hydra, Shield, Sword,
Alpha Flight.
Alpha Flight.
Hammer.
Yeah.
Armor.
And it's like
Yeah.
most of these are
And-
bad. Most of these are terrible
And,
organizations.
and it's just this kind of thought of like everyone being worried about mutants, at
Right,
one point.
yeah.
Like for all of the Marvel history, all these organizations have been secretly like terrified
Yeah.
of what humans or what mutants are going to do, and it gets like Kobe. This really like brings back what you were saying about your initial reaction to Cyclops.
Well, it's also
It's
got the character Karima, who's an Omega Sentinel too.
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
part of that, which is really cool. like I said, there's a lot here that looks like a lot of fun. I think that the thing that threw me off a bit was the map that had Krakoa
Yeah.
in the Pacific.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because is that a
Well,
different
I mean,
Krakoa than the
Krakoa's
Krakoa that they
everywhere. Like
were-
he says, like there's
that they
Krakoa
were
is a,
traveling through?
more than an.
Well,
one place.
so
Well, they make gateways and
Yeah.
they
Right,
grow
and that's
habitats.
and that's the most. I think that's also
And I
one
think
of
they've
the,
just grown different habitats at different locations connected by gateways
yeah. That's also one of the
that
interesting
only
parts.
mutants can travel through.
Is that tumor thing where it like says like it's essentially within like Krakoa's existence, but kind of outside of it, so like it
Yeah, it's
doesn't
not-
know it's there.
Yeah, there's a Krakoa base that's attached to Krakoa, but is not part of the living entity.
And I know that's gonna come in at
Yeah.
some point.
It's
Also,
gonna be
the
like Sinister's lair.
yeah, the
Yeah.
3 drugs are also very interesting because this doesn't put the mutants in a antagonistic thing. Like, yes, they're asserting themselves, but again, it's like we're giving you these things literally as long as you just recognize us as a nation.
Yeah.
Like, if you'll just literally give us some respect and not like try and kill us, here's like a way to like prevent Alzheimer's. Here's a way to like fight every disease, and then here's a way to get 5 years of life. Like, that's huge. But I like putting that spin on the human and mutant thing instead of just making it like,
Yeah.
you took over San Francisco. Like,
I mean, he's doing like, X-Men has been obsessed with the social order of things, but in reality, if you read like a lot of, social revolution studies and literature, I mean, it's always about 3 different aspects: social, political, and economic. And he's kind of like exploring those
Right.
ideas. Like, here's an economic power incentive for a mutant nation
Yeah.
that'll buy eventually like political influence and then social influence.
Yeah.
later.
Well, and it's going back to like what you said and to what X-Men has always been about. I mean, X-Men was about about race relation and about moving forward civil rights. And there's so much there's so many underlying tones of that in this, in a very, very modern, different sense than the original X-Men. Like the fact that these organizations, who are some totally evil and some supposedly just, are talking behind each other's back and communicating about this race that is different than them, that they're scared of because they're different. And then there's the whole there's a very separate but equal type of fight going on with what the X-Men are trying to do, and whether they should be doing it or what the right way is to go about it. And like there's so many undertones of the civil rights movement, but a big evolution of what the civil rights movement looked like during the original X-Men runs.
Yeah, and post-civil rights, about like,
Right.
where are race relations and like how do groups move forward and do all that and establish their own kind of identities and economic independence and like all that stuff is like, he's dealing with some heady themes that, could easily blow up in your face,
But so far, off to a good start.
Yeah.
but off to a good start, or a fair enough start, or I think an interesting start is the best way to put it for me.
I think you're in Jim's camp then, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like you like the ideas, you just don't love.
There's also that weird. And the reason why I go back to I don't think Cyclops is necessarily real. Is in one of those opening scenes. There's like a dude.
Oh yeah, with the eye.
With the
Yeah.
eye gleam, and then that you see, and then they make a point to show that again.
They
in
do.
that Fantastic Four scene without.
Did
like,
we see that they
any
were
real
being
reason?
birthed from these things? I thought it looked like they were planting the flowers.
No,
It looked to me like
they're the first 2 pages. I think are them like popping out of these pods.
some of them were.
and
It looked
then
like they were
and then
planting more of
the
them.
2-page spread happens, and then you see the various members of the.
I interpreted him clearly like
No,
being
I mean,
birthed from a pod,
The
but
2 people who come out are arguably Jean and Cyclops.
yeah. But I also don't think that means that they're not them. I just think that whatever they're going to establish as this huge event that, change things, I think that'll explain it. But I think they're still really them. I don't think they're clones or stand-ins or anything. So, yeah.
And Jim, this is just before we wrap up. This is a quick thing that you might be able to answer, or Matt, you'll be able to answer. Does this wipe away X-Men continuity of the past? Like, or does it matter?
No.
Or is it just completely like its own?
No, that's why I
different
think
thing?
like what we're seeing now is not. We're like it's only the first chapter of a 12-chapter story,
Yeah.
and we're definitely not seeing. We're not really seeing anything yet. We're seeing what Jonathan wants us to see, but there's still if you look past it a little bit,
And I do agree with what I've heard is, I think even Jamie might have said this where, or JK, where it's clearly kind of picking up the ball from Grant Morrison's new X-Men and kind of continuing in that vein. So, I mean,
Grant Morrison's new X-Men made no sense. This makes this.
No,
feels a
as
bit
far
like-
as like it's trying to pave a new path, but still honor what came before. So I don't think it's wiping. Oh, I know. I know. Which, by the way, I'm not the biggest new X-Men person either. I kind of agree with
Still
him.
a great story. The Cassandra
Yes.
Nova story.
But
was
I still
great.
really like stuff about it. But I think this is going to take a similar thing of like, that didn't wipe out all continuity. It very much kept a lot of it, but it made a few tweaks and
Dude,
changed some
that
substantial things.
Professor Xavier killed off his own twin in the womb.
Oh, I loved that part.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Oh, man. Anyway, we need a new X-Men edition of this podcast to defend against Jim Shea. That's after House of X and Powers of 10. Like, we have this run. So I'm sure we'll be back and talk about Powers of 10 when the first issue comes out, and maybe this will snap a whole lot of things and change our whole perception of this. But if you haven't checked out House of X, make sure you go pick it up on shelves now because it's out now. So that'll do it for us on this Comic-Con Hangover edition of Comic Book Nation. If you want to join the journey in full, if you've been hopping on lately, because we've thrown a lot of bonus episodes at you for Spider-Man and Comic-Con and Marvel Hall H and all this stuff. So if you want to join the regular ride, we are here every Wednesday and every Friday on Comicbook.com, where you can find a link to our RSS feed and subscribe, or you can subscribe on your favorite listening platform. We are on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Google Playlists, or you can tell any Amazon Alexa device to play Comic Book Nation podcast, and they'll fire up the latest episode for you. If you have anything you heard and you want to continue from our discussion, you can always find us on social media at the hashtag Comic Book Nation, or you can find me at Kofi Outlaw.
You can find me at Matt Aguilar CB.
And I'm at Charlie Ridgely.
And if I don't know, is there supposed to be something coming in? Oh yeah, that's right. If you want to leave us a glowing 5-star review on iTunes, you will find that every so often we read our reviews from the show on the air, and if we read your review, you'll get your t-shirt. My brain is falling apart. I only have a couple cells left.
What's happening?
Oh, Comic-Con hangover is real, man. My brain is really just falling apart. Yeah,
I literally saw it fall apart. In real time.
I was like something t-shirts. I know it's about t-shirts. So if we read your review on air, your 5-star review, we will send you some Comic Book Nation swag, and we have some pretty cool t-shirts that people seem to be enjoying. So that'll do it for us. We're gonna get out of here. Be sure to tune in next time. We're Comic Book Nation. We're out.
Deuces.